Select Board has done their work on the warrant articles, capital and CPA, they're done. Planning Board has their recommendations ready. So, we're really in good shape. The remaining work that needs to be done tonight is the budget. And again, just talking about traffic control, just moving the pieces around. By law, we are required to do a quote-unquote balanced budget by June 30th of every year. We always go back in the fall and we make adjustments, and the adjustments that we make are any kind of deferred spending that we plan to do, but weren't quite sure that we have the ability to fully carry out. And the other is our certified free cash and certified reserves for the enterprise funds. That'll happen after July 1st, so we plan to spend free cash. We do not have it right now, so we're gonna have to go back and address that budget in the fall town meeting. So there's a two-step process here. So that I hope that's helpful in terms of providing the landscape in which we're operating. We also have a consent agenda, which we should at least touch upon tonight. And then we have a public forum coming up next Wednesday, and we can talk a little bit about that. So, what would you find helpful at this time?
Well, should we go through the budget and decide what we're gonna do about that, and then move forward? Does everybody agree with that? And that's the spreadsheet that you sent us?
Right, so if anybody needs an extra copy of that hard copy, I have that here.
I got one.
You have the one electronically?
I have it both ways.
I better check just in case, because things change. Make sure I'm on.
So this is exactly what you sent us. It's not changed in any way?
If there is a change, there's no change in revenues, no change in expenditures. We have the revenue and expenditure summary prepared on January 31st, which shows a balanced budget. And then we have the enhanced revenue and expenditure summary that you asked for the last time.
Right, so those are columns,
That would be on the next to last page,
which is
which would be the fourth tab in, I think, or the third tab in.
revenue expenditure summary?
Yeah.
Okay. No, here. Look, what, you want to see a magic circle?
Put your hand. Oh, that's it.
Okay.
You can make yours bigger?
So the revenue expenditure summary that you asked for, prepared on the 14th of April, shows a shortfall of $224,028. Almost entirely, all of that is coming from the fire department, whose request is $217,000. And then there's the revised free cash spending plan, and the only difference is the $5,000 that I had proposed to transfer into stabilization back in February has now been removed.
No, okay, we discussed that the other day.
Yes, so that's where we are.
So basically, it's the fire department that's, we have to decide whether or not we are recommending that or not. Is that correct?
I think, well, let's just walk through the front
Well, it's
page.
what we did last year. We waited on the police. We waited to the fall, and we moved it from the free cash in the fall, correct?
The school, there were several things.
Yeah.
No, the
but
school
police-
is, they kept their level budget.
They folded the
I know, but I'm just answering her question from last year. We
Yeah.
withheld 75,000. There was a
Oh.
few things, multiple things. And that if we got it back in the fall, we would give it back to them.
We can take a look at the clerk's request for a new voting machine for $6,500. That I think that we can transfer over to the capital budget.
Okay.
I think the need is there. It's just we need to pay for it through the operating budget, given possible shortfall. Fire, $217,000. Highway had asked for $3,000 that I had recommended being cut. They asked for that back. Cable TV increased their ask by
You're gonna have to go and buy either in very much in order or call out some line and page
Okay.
numbers.
So second page, number 599, cable
Ah.
TV. You'll see in the middle of the page, $6,882. That is their revised request that they presented.
Where do you see
Where
that?
do you, oh, $5.99 right there.
Yeah.
$5.99.
There you go.
Cable TV.
Oh, there's a $5.99 down here too.
Yeah, that's,
What did they ask for?
they asked for a higher operating budget than originally presented, so the amount is $6,082. But that would be enterprise fund, would not affect your general fund balance.
Right, because that's money that they get from
Cable,
cable.
Okay, so that doesn't really affect us.
No.
yeah.
Okay.
There's park commission for, then that's $630. They're requesting back the $1,300 that I'd recommended that we trim.
What's the 1,300 from?
Two places, tuition and meetings. They had requested $500 and I had trimmed that by $300 because their historical usage never brought them above $200 of use. And then equipment purchase, for the same reason, they asked for $3,500. I trimmed them by $1,000 because their historical usage never exceeded $1,400.
But did they give you some reasons for why they were asking for those particular values?
I don't recall them,
This is Park and Rec.
Park and Rec.
They don't even have like a permanent home, do they?
You know, they're over at the senior center right now.
Right, but isn't that like, what happens when they're building your senior center and everybody's gotta get out of that building, where are they going?
I suppose that's a if question, because in order to build a new, they're gonna certainly build a new senior center, that's in the works.
Mhm.
But the demolition of Hooper School has to be decided at the fall town meeting. And if we need to move Park and Rec to the office right here, we'll do just fine.
So,
Kids
is
are
it for
gonna play in your
computers or
office?
something? What is it for?
I'm sorry,
Do you know what her equipment is for? Is it for like updated computers or,
I don't know.
okay.
Oh, so it's hard to decide whether it's a value expenditure or not if we don't know what it's for. All right, so we need a question mark there, maybe.
Right?
I wrote air conditioner down,
Oh, yeah.
but I don't remember if that
Oh,
was,
that could be, because isn't it all hot over that
because that
building?
generated the whole discussion about air conditioning in that
Yeah,
building.
but we have air conditioner over there.
Over where?
Over at Russell School that we just bought.
That you can move over
We
there?
can get that out of there and put it over there.
So maybe that's what we need to find out what it's for.
Yeah. We did some preliminary exploration in terms of what the electrical upgrade would look like in order to add an air conditioner there. It looks like for $12,000, which is a high estimate, we can get that, we can get the air conditioner over at the Hooper School. We can upgrade the electrical capacity of Hadley Media, and we can provide the electrical components that are needed for Park and Rec.
The library issue really isn't part of the 218 budget. We'll have some clarification in June if they get the grant. If they don't get the grant, then we're back to square one again with it. So I don't think you have to deal with that in 18. It'll be 19 if they get the grant.
So if you're upgrading electrical for the media, is part of their budget gonna pay for it?
We just got the estimate in today, and I suggested that we do a three-way split on the cost.
Mhm.
So there's a maintenance budget for that building, which is currently has $8,800 in it, still remaining just for that one building. There is an old article that is dedicated to that building, which I believe has $57,000 still in it, but we're gonna take 26 for the parking lot. So 57 minus 26, that would be the remainder. And then TV5, and we haven't even approached them to find out if they're willing to chip in some money.
All right, well, let's,
Question mark.
that's still a question mark, okay. Where's the next up and down?
I think we've just run through them.
You had a question about something earlier.
Yeah. I'm trying to find the line item that I was looking at. It's in the DPW.
Mhm.
Laborers, the wages. Overtime. I can't find it. We can skip
Is it
it
on the
and I'll go
first-
back.
Is it on the first page here? So all
No, it
this
was
is-
broken down more. Where's the? What are the wage increases for the is there wage increases in there for the non-union members? It's only for the union
Only for the
ones?
union.
So across the board, like none of these union, non-union people are getting raises?
People who are on a contract would receive an increase. People who are part of the union where we negotiated a collective bargaining agreement, they would also have an increase. But the non-union, non-contractual people do not have an increase in this budget.
Okay, so. I don't know if I think this was an issue I had last year too, because it's like, if two people get a raise, then they all should get a raise. And so I guess I just want to know how we approach that. Why do
We'll
you?
approach the idea of a COLA.
Yeah.
The select board haven't decided on a COLA for the non-union people. So that's, I imagine that's the
I
discussion.
mean, their
we're gonna
jobs are
refer
just
to
as
the
important as the
about.
other ones, so I just don't logically see how it's right.
Shows the value of the union.
I'm in a union and I've been told there's no money, you get no raise. That's the way it goes. So, I don't think unions always work in your favor either. But, so I guess that was my question as far as the non-union versus the union. We approached that last year and I thought we put money aside when we voted for money in the fall, they would get raises.
Right, that would have been for the retro pay.
Yeah.
Because some of the unions came to the table late, and we didn't conclude those.
No, I thought it was for non-union employees.
Oh, well, we did offer 1.5% increase for the non-union for this fiscal year.
Okay.
But we didn't make that decision until October, so we had to pay retro back to July 1st.
Okay, so is there any decision made if they're getting a 1.5?
No, there's been no discussion at all about that.
So I guess Molly, is there gonna be discussion on that, or
Are
Don?
we gonna be talking about that?
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah.
I don't think
We
so.
haven't, I think in part.
I think that would be a fall discussion.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, if we're gonna have the discussion, it would be if the dollars were there in the fall. And the other thing is we'll be taking into account the actual consumer price index information as well, which over the past couple of years has really have suggested no increase. But we did do the 1.5 last year. So we'll have to pull all of that information in.
Okay,
So then the only real discussion point is the fire department.
Right, that's the request that we cannot easily accommodate right now, so.
Speaking of which. Tell them to hold it down. What did the select board finally decide about the fire department?
We haven't yet.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think generally we're interested in pursuing the staffing, but the dollars aren't there right now, so the next conversation we have about this, in all likelihood, we're gonna be talking about you know, do we try to address that in the fall? But the board itself hasn't actually voted per se.
on that. And could you just go over exactly what they're asking for in the 217?
Right, so they're asking for 4 positions.
Now they have the chief and one other paid position, is that
Right,
right?
a chief and a lieutenant and a part-time
Firefighter?
office manager, firefighter.
Oh, office manager.
Okay. So they're looking for a deputy chief, they're looking for captain, they're looking for 2 firefighters full-time. That would bring the wages up by $206,000 and change. And then there's the ancillary costs associated with having new people, uniforms, physicals, training, office supplies, computers, airpack. That would bring that up to 217,348.
David, I also believe that the related employee benefits impacts are not accounted for in there
Right.
as well. So
Correct.
that's just the direct cost to the fire department.
That's right, so there'll be additional costs which would show up in the benefits.
35%.
Right, I was going to bring that up too.
Are they trying to
So-
get rid of the volunteer, I mean, is the volunteer thing not working? Has there been issues that they're not able to respond because of a volunteer basis?
Yeah, I mean, I think what the chief is suggesting is that there are 2 things going on. One is just the actual volume of activity. That when you think about the call force, you know, it's been around for decades upon decades and has worked extremely well for the town of Hadley, but during that time, the volume of activity, especially along the Route 9 corridor, has kind of increased exponentially along with the business along the Route 9 corridor. So it's not just the residents, you know, people oftentimes just think about, okay, there are only so many, you know, 50, 600 people or whatever we have for population, but the fire department has to service the entire town, which includes the whole commercial district. So, you know, Mike has provided information to suggest that that call volume associated, particularly during the daytime hours, has really dramatically increased. That's one issue. At the same time, with the call force, based on the nature of the town of Hadley for generations, really, we had the privilege of having many of the farm families who had people working in town.
Right.
So, you know, the one generation stayed on the farm and then the next generation stayed on the farm, so you had access to town residents who could be on a call force,
Who could leave
who
the farm?
could leave and come. And I think if you think about it over the years, for those of you who know who is on our call force, it's become increasingly challenging because many of the individuals have taken jobs out of town now. They can no longer commit. So the population available to staff a call force, the demographics just aren't working in our favor. So, and then, you know, Mike would be articulate on many issues, but I think those are the 2 primary drivers behind it.
I seem to remember him saying that the volunteers that he have now, he's working to the bone.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm all for safety first, so.
For years, we always had at least 2 or 3 personnel in the highway department that were slash firemen too.
Oh, so
And we lost that. Perfect example, a week and a half ago, there was a rescue on the mountain. No one was in town, the only responding was the chief to go. And so other departments were called in, you know, but this is what's happening during the day. All the volunteers are out of town working.
right.
In the day, we don't have the personnel to cover. With the accidents that are occurring on Route 9, you know, and they go out and assist everything. It could be an accident, it could be a problematic medical issue where they need additional help, where a police officer can't handle it himself. So they're responding to all kinds of things now.
And just to amplify what's been said is that the training requirements, the certification requirements of owners, firefighting is a very highly regulated enterprise, and it's very difficult for the volunteers to do anything other than just maintain the certification.
I think something that's really important too, David, is the personnel we're talking about is just to run the fire department adequately. It isn't creating a ambulance service in the town. That's something
That's
further
that's
down the
another-
drawing board. This is just to operate the fire department at efficiency level that we need to do.
As of February 1st, we had 22 on-call firefighters. So I'm just gonna throw something out on the table. I haven't discussed it with anybody. yet.
Uh-oh. Everybody got their seatbelt on?
It's the school of thought that half a loaf of bread is still a lot of bread.
Oh my God, I love your sayings. Go ahead.
Keep going, yeah.
All right.
If you're not getting any French toast, I can feel that not coming.
What if we cut the request for the firefighters in half, rather than fork it two, and compensate that by reducing the OPEB contribution at the Springtown meeting by corresponding amount?
Well,
And then go back at the fall and address both those issues if we can.
that seems like you're kicking the can down the road a little bit. Can we play some what-if questions?
Yes, of course.
So what, say we decide that the chief has made a good faith estimate in how much he really needs to run the fire department,
Mhm.
and we say we're gonna fund this.
Mhm.
What happens then? Where does that money come from exactly?
There's a number of options that you have. You can go back and take a look at your revenues and see if you can increase them. There are some areas in the revenues that are conservative, because that's the best management practice of budgeting, is you keep your revenues conservative, also with the long-term goal of enhancing your free cash. So whatever we do to revenues has an impact next year on free cash, but that's one place you could go. The other place that you can think about is how much free cash do you want to use? Now, the select board has taken a vote after lengthy debate on the free cash policy, but you could go back and take another look at that, whether that makes sense. You can. I think those are the two places that you can really look to increase the budget in order to accommodate the request for $217,000.
Can I throw a little bit more information into that
Sure.
question too? And I don't think I'm speaking out of school, so this is a conversation directly with the chief, but he recognizes that, first of all, he was pretty adamant that it needed to be the four, and having 1 foot in, 1 foot out from a staffing standpoint wasn't necessarily gonna work. He was willing to look at it, but, you know, the idea of just bringing 2 people on, scheduling wise, it doesn't really work, because there are X number of days on and X number of days off, so basically only part of the week would he have anybody on, and then the
Oh.
other days he wouldn't be
So
staffing.
you only can have fires on Mondays and Tuesdays?
Yeah, so, but I mean, so I think he would wanna really chime in on that possibility. But the other thing is he also recognized that when the schools came in, they were asking, as you know, for a few $100,000 more. The school committee made the decision to, because some of their numbers were still moving around because of the nature of them, to go ahead and bite the bullet and take more money out of school choice, with the hope that we were gonna have a discussion about the schools in the fall as well, so that they would be there with the fire department. And then there are other things that the select board has been talking about that we feel are very important that have to do with town hall operations. We've talked about information technology, we've talked about human resources, and again, you know, we've still got, we don't have complete information on all of those. So what Mike had said to me, and I think he said it to you as well, was that he would rather, if he had to, you know, hold off and make it part of a bigger discussion in the fall. That he was okay with that. I mean, obviously he would like the staffing tomorrow, but if push came to shove, that as long as it was being addressed sooner rather than later, that he would be okay with that. So I'm just wanting you to know that.
The one thing I remember that he was very adamant about, he said he needs 3 personnel addition because for the scheduling to work, he has to have 3.
Mhm.
And 2 doesn't work. He could get away with not having 4, but he needs 3.
Mhm.
So I remember that, remember?
Yep.
That was an important factor.
So I want to go back to my question. When you say raise revenue, what are we talking about in terms of, people's tax bills? So, for
Well,
example,
we would be going to non-tax sources first for revenues. So, for example, we can take a look at our motor vehicle excise taxes if you go to the 3rd page in.
third page in,
So at the top it would say revenues, general fund.
it's going to be.
Fourth page.
4th page. That's right, 1, 2,
Oh,
3,
okay,
4.
fourth page, okay. That's where we are right here,
All right.
okay.
So we'd be looking at that box on the bottom there, local receipts. So if you look at motor vehicle excise, it's $660,000 is the estimate. We could push that up a little higher. Same with the motel occupancy tax.
When you said we could push that up a little higher, I mean, you just, how does that work? You just decide that you're gonna,
You can see the 680 was the actual in 2016.
Yeah, and
Yep.
he's figuring a lower amount.
are you figuring a lower amount because there are less cars in Hadley, or is that,
He's being conservative.
Again,
being
being
conservative.
conservative.
oh, I see.
There's a steep depreciation on the motor vehicle excise.
Thank God.
Yeah,
Well,
mine's now down to 300.
thank God up to a point. Careful what you ask for.
It's not me.
You know, one of the reasons why this number keeps on bumping around where it is because people are buying new cars all the time. So that really helps us out. So you want to be a little careful with that line.
Okay. All right, so that's one place it can go up.
Motel occupancy tax is another place we can take a look.
Because we have a new one coming, but
We
that
have a-
probably won't hit until 2019, correct?
True, but we have more UMass football games and things like that. And
Oh, because they moved them back.
yeah, so we may be looking at more revenue there.
I hate the thought of you thinking, if this happens. I'm more like, we need guarantee or
Well,
use what we actually know. And this is one thing I don't like about free cash. It's, you don't know in the fall where we're gonna be. If we're gonna say, oh, okay, we can go ahead and use this and hopefully in the fall we'll get it. You know, it's not really good practice. And I know that the select board is trying to get away from that over a certain period of time. Right, Molly?
Absolutely.
Okay, so,
but even from both of these, let's just say both of these sources come up, you're still not gonna get the 200 and change.
No, you're not going to be able to get it from that
No.
line.
And if we increase these, I mean, then that's less free cash that we'll end up with.
Well, that's it. Is you have to be thinking about. It's like pool. Here's another one.
excuse me, Donald, can you not do that? Because I'm focusing on your clicking and not listening to him. I'm sorry. Thank you. Don't worry, I'll speak up for you. He's afraid to say it, but I'll say
Well, I don't
it.
want to pick on him.
So just
Well, I'm
like in
sorry,
pool,
David.
it's not the shot you sink; it's the shot you set yourself up for. And so when I'm looking at these revenues, I'm thinking 2 years down the line and what kind of impact are we likely to see?
The other thing I was thinking about, I know that, I don't know if it was last budget or the year before, that you were looking with your department meetings, seeing how each department might be able to generate, you know, through permits and
Mhm.
other things, more funding. And so I know that, I think that was a couple years ago that
Mhm.
that discussion happened. So has there been an increase on like individual departments and their fees and
Yeah.
being more
So that's-
consistent on charging things, or?
a couple of things. First of all, that's coming up on the next department head meeting, is that I haven't seen a whole lot of fees examined by the department heads, so I want to remind them that they have that ability and responsibility, quite frankly, to make sure that their costs for administering fees, permits and other administrative processes, that those are being covered. The other is that we just received from the Attorney General the authorization, the approval on that bylaw that we passed at the last town meeting, whereby we can now withhold issuing permits if people owe us taxes. This is something that we could do by law beforehand, but we had to wait a full 12 months and then go through a public hearing process. Now we can just do it, yes.
And I hate to bring Northampton up, but if you come in and you want a trench permit and I call and look up on your list and you owe real estate taxes, you don't get it. We don't have to wait 12 months. So what's the difference?
There may be some sort of charter that makes a difference, or special legislation that Northampton has an effect that we didn't have.
Yeah.
But now we have that ability. That bylaw has been posted and approved. So now we can start enforcing these permits
The 12-month or right away?
right away. Gotta
So we'd
be,
be just like Northampton then?
yeah, we'd be.
I'm not comparing
When-
apples to apples. I just kind of thought that we all always fell under the same
Rules, yeah.
rules.
In this one small respect, we would be like Northampton,
Okay, or Amherst, or,
not Amherst.
no?
Never
We're never like
Amherst.
Amherst. So
Well,
the
difference
reason
is
I asked that,
you can look up and see if they owe real estate taxes.
right,
We're not networked here.
or we make a
so-
phone call, or.
Yeah.
Well, this is something we talked about at the department head meeting, is that, this, not that the building's so huge that you can't find where you
No.
are. And this is something that we talked about, putting on every
I agree.
permit, and saying, have you checked with the,
There are a number of communities that, in the permitting process, they have a section on the bottom that the collector treasurer
Mhm.
has to sign off that there are no taxes due.
Yeah,
Should be the same here.
Right.
so
And the reason I bring that up is, I think the
Tim
discussion.
does not like that.
Well, the discussion came up, I think, when we were the new DPW director, when we were getting new staffing in and people were retiring, that things were going to, since there was new employees, we were going to, change the process. And so each department, not each department, but a lot of the departments have the ability to generate funds in different ways. So I would have personally liked to see them, they want these things, so are they trying to help themselves as well, that kind of type thing, and not just looking for the taxes and whatever, to be able to give them the
Anything
things that they
we have
need.
direct control over, we've been dealing with it, like say licensing, we've increased that. We're talking about water and sewer rates to get more money into the enterprise funds. So anything that we have control over, we're looking at it and trying to create more revenues. It's not easy to do, but we're looking at every stone and turning them over.
but she's asking if the other departments are doing the same, and I think we need to step up
I
our
think
game
we've
on that
instructed
one.
them to do that already, and
But are we
don't forget,
following
the
up
other
with it?
departments have been level funded going into 2, 3, this will be the third year. They don't have any excess money in those budgets either to find, unless you pass it on to the consumer again. And
So-
you do that and they're not very happy.
So you bring up
You know.
water and sewer, I have a question. I was at a select board meeting and it was discussed, I think you were talking about it, that we're gonna go to quarterly billing for that. So is that increasing their office hour? I mean, the time that's spent on the billing? Cause I know personally that it's much more time consuming to do it 4 times a year versus 2 times a year. And so what's going to happen with that? Are you looking to raise the rates at some point to accommodate the extra labor and equipment expenses to get everything up to date, that it can happen more smoothly?
We have a hearing actually May
May 3rd.
May 3rd, yeah. So we're going to be talking about that. And then Sue and Kim and Marlo and Sharon and David got together and did a kind of a process walkthrough. And so there've been some changes made as to There were some functions that were being performed in the tax collector's office that historically were performed in the DPW.
But that's just the reading section, Molly.
Mm.
That's
No,
not
I'm
the
just
issuance of bills and all
I'm
of
just
that.
explaining.
You do need
So-
some additional hours in your office to accomplish this, right?
Yes.
And that's what we have to decide too.
So in the
You know.
process of that conversation, some of that work did move back, and it's, as Sue's saying, is related just to the reading side of things, but it was
Yeah.
also the research back and forth. And so where the increase would come in is, obviously if you're doing something 4 times instead of 2 times, logic says it's gonna increase hours.
Mhm.
So Sue's still looking for that increase in hours, I believe.
Yes.
From my standpoint, you know, and I think there's a question as to when you're changing a process, it's also an opportunity to look at the technology and see if there are other opportunities for streamlining. And so before we go ahead and this is just me, commit to the additional hours, the folks at the DPW offered assistance to help getting the bills out, and they don't even use a folder inserter or
But
anything like that.
ultimately, and that's great, because it's shared work, but ultimately, when a resident has an issue with a water sewer bill, they're gonna come to her office, they're not gonna go to the DPW, so I can see that when this is implemented, that it is gonna generate more hours needed by her office,
Well, part of the reason
regardless.
to do it is we're actually hoping that the number of inquiries goes down, because now people are catching issues more quickly than they would, because it's 6 months now before. So when somebody has a real problem, it's like going on 6 months. But the point being,
Mhm.
until we get there, we really don't know what the impact's going to be. So it's a question in my mind of, is there a way for us to hold off on committing to the additional hours,
What hours are you looking for?
see how it goes?
I mean, like, how many more hours are they looking
Six
for?
a week?
5 hours a week, 2.5 for me, 2.5 for Kim. And what I did say to David was, obviously, if we're not going to work the hours, we're not putting in for them. And I realize that that is really private industry mindset versus public, but when they moved water and sewer billing into my office, they added 15 hours semi-annually. You still have the bill printing and the collection and the reconciling. You kind of double the work. So I'm asking for 5 hours because I think that we have a really good system down. I think if you wanted to look for efficiencies, it would be in the IT end, which,
Yeah.
you
We
know,
should look
we
at it
don't
for the
have
whole.
that.
Exactly.
The
So,
big picture.
Yeah.
yeah.
So, but when that happens, then maybe the
Because,
hours
I mean,
can
I
be
right now
decreased.
am working
That's what we-
37 and a half hours a week most of the time.
Yeah,
And,
so I
Yeah.
mean, I get that, so if
and I'm
you-
paid for 35, so.
Right.
There's other positive things on this also. It gives the average water user 3 months to detect a leak versus 6 months and a very large bill, you know? It's also gonna enhance our revenues for the town, the money coming in a quarterly instead of every 6 months. So that's a positive. We also have on the town meeting warrant an elderly workforce. We're proposing to put the 10 people in at $1,000 each. I don't know if that's gonna pass yet or not, but hypothetically, if it does, we may be able to use some of those people to reduce hours in different segments of our budgets. So,
Yeah,
and they
I agree
would
with you,
get a
those-
reduction in their taxes.
Yeah,
But
they
those
have to be
can't
bonded
deal
in
with-
my office.
Yeah,
so
for
that's-
yours would be different.
You can't really have them like
I think that the
looking
point
at
is
personal
just,
information either.
we're trying to look at all of this, and technology is such a huge part of it, and because until you get the right technology in place, it's really hard for anybody to recognize the efficiencies that can be gained from it. And same thing, I mean, from the outside, it sounds great, but you don't know if it's really gonna happen until it happens. So it's just a question of, do you add the hours now, or do you hold off, see what you really need, and then address it later? And that's just the camp that I happen to be in, and Sue clearly, of course, is in the other
Yeah.
camps. It's sort of
Well, I
different.
just look at it as that if you're gonna work the hours, kinda like if these non-union employees are working just as hard as these union ones, but they're not getting any extra benefit that they are. So as well as her office, if she's gonna have to put in the extra time until we figure out how we're gonna do the IT in this building to make a lot of things more efficient, why should that office, and maybe all the other offices, I don't know, I'm not in this building. There's other,
There's for sure. I mean,
there's
our
other
offices-
offices that might need the extra time
You
as
have the
well.
same issue,
Oh,
Linda.
yeah. Well, what I would like to have seen by now, but I know we've all got so much to do, and this is sort of indicative of the overall problem. We haven't, yet gotten together to talk about how we might share, maybe the burden
Share
is at different
resources.
times.
Right.
Maybe at certain times, extra help is needed there. At certain other times of year when we're generating reports, documents, W-2s, or maybe that's a time when we need it. I would love to see more coordination in shared support staff. At least we need to start talking about that.
So
And
on
the
May
technology's
3rd,
huge.
Department meeting, guess what's on the agenda?
That,
That exact issue's on the agenda for their department head meeting on May 3rd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the technology is huge when we've got people sitting and waiting. I was telling Sue today about someone coming at 9 o'clock to pay something, and I was just starting my computer, and I said it was going to be a full 10 to 15 minutes before I got the particular program open, and they walked out. They said, "I don't need a receipt." So we need to
I
get
have
that
people
stuff.
coming
We
in
need to
to
get it
pay
going
bills.
sooner. We need to get our
and
computers
this has
going.
been a
And they don't have
conversation
their
for how
bill.
long?
They need to
And
start.
I go,
And we need to
It'll
jump
be a couple
in
of minutes.
and do it.
Yeah,
And stop
like-
talking about it and
like
kind of come up
fast.
with a plan and do it.
Yeah,
To
because
make
it's getting
this
worse by the
more
week.
efficient, because if you have more efficiency here, we'll have more efficiency in these numbers.
We'd love
That's
to
how
do
I
all
do
these
that.
things, but there's one problem. Where do you get the money?
Well, I don't know.
That's where the big problem
We're
is.
coming up with money for
Everybody
buildings.
wants, human resources. They want
Yep.
financial managers.
And you should have an HR. Don
maybe
Hadley
we
is
should, but,
growing-
uh,
is growing.
Yeah, that's killing us.
And
We
you-
haven't got the money even to fund 218 budget.
And I get that.
I'm not happy with the budget, but out of necessity, you have to support it. How can something be balanced when you have to wait to the fall and get $500,000 in free cash? There's
not.
nothing gonna tell you that you're gonna get that $500,000. There's all kinds of problems that could create it, and you may get half of that. And then you're gonna be looking for $250,000 from somewhere at the fall town meeting. You're gonna probably tap stabilization. That's the first place, but we've been borrowing from Peter to pay Paul for too long. And we have to pay for what we do. Our revenues can no longer support our operating budgets. It's quite obvious.
Are you suggesting a tax increase?
I wouldn't suggest any override at this point after a $95 thing, and we're talking to give more money to the fire department, and the schools took a big chunk. And before you get an override, before the money comes back, it's going to be a year and a half anyways.
That
So,
$95
it's
is
got to
not-
be on the table for future discussion. There's no question about it. Or we can't survive. You have a choice, an override or major cuts. That's your choice. Very simple.
What did you say about $95?
That 95 is what you're referring to as what the cost per household might be if all these
For all
buildings.
buildings.
The ballot questions that will
But
pass,
that
the
doesn't-
9 ballot
you're talking
questions.
That
different
doesn't
things.
include the 2.5% increase.
Yeah.
Right,
and
it's
that
much
type.
more than 95. And so alls I'm trying to say is that I think the residents of Hadley need to seriously look at if we have to increase things or not increase things, and we really need to look at the big picture and get it under control, because you don't have a balanced budget every year, and I'm not a favor of free cash. I get working on it, but anyways, let's move forward so we can kind of work
So
our
we
way
can get back
through
to the
this.
fire department is where we started this whole discussion.
Well,
We
I
were
know,
gonna
I
get
hate
there.
to pick on the fire department, just the fire department, because I think that there's other,
No, I
places you
understand,
can
but
look
at
at,
this
too.
particular moment, the fire department's asking for an increase, and we have to
Right.
decide if we're gonna be
And I-
with that or against that. That's what we're
right.
trying
I
to
would
do.
be with it because I'm a firm believer, safety first. If we don't have safety in the town, then,
Well, I agree with that, 100%.
okay. But obviously, it's a big chunk of money, and I think we should wait till the select board kind of comes around and makes a decision and tells us what their thoughts are.
Well, they were sort of put on the back burner because we took care of the police department first. You know, we've
Another
got them a lot
safety.
more personnel
And I
and
agree with that.
equipment and everything, and the police department is in pretty good shape now.
But you did it
for the
gradually, you
future.
didn't do it all at once.
Well,
You
kinda
did
did
it
it all at once in the
Gradually, but
fall, right?
2 years.
Yeah, so,
We did about, yeah, we did
You did it all
29,000
once?
increase in the fall.
How
But
much?
there was a reason behind
29?
that too. We were trying to whittle down all of the overtime that the police were paying. And that's getting cut, you know, a lot. And then, so it's a positive thing too.
It's a
so-
much, fire department is a much bigger chunk than the police department, so
Well-
it's easier to find that 29,000, did you say? How much did you say?
49 was the
49,000.
increase for the police department.
Right.
You're right, it's much easier to find
And-
49 than 200.
Right, and by doing that, it also did cut down on their overtime.
Yeah.
So it saves money there.
And David, do you foresee the police receipts going up? I mean, now that, they have more people, I believe that they talked about when they presented the additional people, they said one of the things that they were gonna do was that if someone was caught, I think, with drinking, instead of making it they were just gonna fine them.
Oh,
There
yeah,
was-
right, right.
So they were coming up with different ways of making more money.
That's where I was,
So
yeah.
I'm thinking now that they have the staff, we should see an increase.
yeah, and they have a dedicated traffic officer too. Should be
Yeah.
bringing in, not that that's the reason why we're doing traffic control, but one result of traffic control is enhanced revenues from speeding tickets and such.
And I would think that the fire right now, it's tough for them because they have such a limited staff to even meet
Right.
what we have listed here for fire receipts. It's probably very difficult, considering they're so busy. But hopefully if we do give them more staff, they will be able to meet and exceed those.
And the fire department budget is so much smaller than the police budget anyway,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like 3 times.
Right.
David,
But the receipts are so much, even more.
has, in any of the discussions, has the fire chief mentioned that with more staff, there would be more inspections and any fees that
Yeah,
might be offsetting?
That's one of the things that we've always been concerned about is that the life safety inspections, what's the quality of them when they get done? I'm sure that they're just fine, but they, are some of the others not getting as much attention? Are you able to put out all the fires associated with, quote, fires, associated with administering permits because people don't comply or they don't report, and then you have to go chasing around for illegal installations or not substandard installations. And then there's all the other kinds of inspections that are supposed to happen that is difficult to do, one, because people aren't trained to do it, or that if you're trained to do it, you're in the middle of an inspection and the code goes off, you've got to drop what you're doing and go off it. And I know that's a
You know, it isn't like the fire department was neglected either. They just got delivered $800,000 fire truck. They've got 2.9 million going into a substation. Personnel has been neglected, but the tools that they need to work, they've been given them.
Right, but
You
you
know,
have
but
to
they're
have
lacking
people to
the
work
personnel.
The
them.
chief can only drive one truck at a
You have to have
time.
people to
Well, I know,
assist
but
them.
they know what they're doing and
Yeah.
they handle it well.
The town has
So-
grown, and the need to full-time fire department, you were talking about 2, 3, 4 years ago. I mean, it's a need, and it's finally, you either gotta jump in, kinda like your IT here, you either gotta jump in and figure it out, or you're gonna keep putting it off, and it's just gonna get worse. So I'm a firm believer in safety, regardless if it's on Route 9 or North Hadley or all the way over near towards South Hadley. We all should have the, if something were to happen, we should all feel like there's
Someone's gonna
people
be there to
there
help
that's
you,
gonna
yeah.
help us. Just like when he was out in the mountain and he couldn't get anybody to help him. So regardless.
So,
I
but
mean,
when you speak like this to board, it sounds like you're advocating an override.
I'm not advocating anything. I'm
Then
like,
where do you
come
get
on-
the money?
Well, I don't know, you're on the
You
same.
know.
They're trying to talk
But the whole
about
point
that.
is, they're trying to whittle it down to
Right.
where we need to be.
Well, I think
So
we're gonna
that-
handle 18, one way or another.
But
but 19 is where everything's gonna implode.
Well,
Just
It's
on
quite obvious.
But
Just
are you-
respectfully, this is the finance committee meeting, it's not the select board meeting.
No, no, but
Exactly.
they're,
We need
they're
to-
asking
So-
questions and then I try to answer their questions.
No,
Well,
you know.
I appreciate that.
You know, that's
Exactly.
all.
But don't
It's
put words in my mouth,
information that
please.
you need to deal with the issue. I'm not trying to give you directions on anything, that's your job, believe
Okay,
me.
so let's not put words in my mouth, because I'm not up here saying that we need an override. If that's how you
No,
feel,
but
that's
this
your
is,
deal.
if you get funding, I just gotta know where it comes from.
Well, you want us to sit
You
here
can't
and
hypothetically say you
hopefully-
wanna do all this, you have to tie it to funding somehow.
Okay, so let's just move on and drop that subject, Donald, because obviously I'm not gonna say anything that makes you happy. So, moving forward, go ahead, back to the fire department.
Okay. So what I heard David say is that he will be able to come up with that 217,000, whatever it is.
No, he thought we could look at numbers
Well, that's how you
to
that's how you whittle it up from here, there, and everywhere.
Right.
Don't panic. You look panicked.
I'm not panicked. Nothing panicked.
You're gonna find us another local bread, right?
You want wheat, you want whole wheat, you want.
You're gonna find us some more bread.
Gabriel
Friendship.
wanted that.
Looking for opportunities. So can you explain this 55,000 coming from University of Massachusetts?
Yes.
What's that for?
That's a pilot, that's a payment that is set by an agreement that we're going to be renegotiating. That agreement expires in December 2017. So I was meeting with the community representative with the university, and I brought that up, that we need to start thinking about a time schedule for renewing this. But this is to serve as an offset for all of the services that we provide to the university, particularly when there's a sports event or some sort of cultural event at the Mullins Center, for police fire protection, the use of apparatus, and all the other kinds of things that we have to address whenever there's a large happening at UMass, graduation, special events,
But
etc.
that money's already accounted for in the budget.
Yes, that's 55, but there's an opportunity to increase that number in December, so we could look at
So is
that.
there a case to be made? Obviously, we expand our fire services by adding personnel. Then
Mhm.
proportionally, some of that would go towards UMass. So maybe we can get some more money out of this agreement
Yep.
if we are approving this 220
Mhm.
or 17.
And did we end up getting any more money from the meals?
Oh, right.
From meals?
For
Yeah,
meals at the football field?
So we'll talk to the Department of Revenue. The football field is being accounted for in the revenues for meals. But our meals are looking really good. They continue to increase
Right.
every quarter. So we are generally getting more money than we have before.
But still, that's an unknown. Like,
Well,
the
these are-
economy tanks, people aren't going to go out to eat anymore.
all of these numbers are,
I've already stopped going out to eat.
the liquor stores will be in business because people will be so depressed they want to drink. So.
Do a local option liquor tax?
Local option tax.
I think one of the things about Hadley is that we don't see the highs whenever the economic boom is happening, but we never see the lows either. I won't say we sailed through the Great Recession, but we certainly held our own. We had to spend more in our reserves than we had planned to, but we were never in the situation that many of my other colleagues in the East, where they were cutting services and raising taxes at the same time. So
That must have made them very popular.
it's never a good day when you go to the taxpayers and say you're going to be plowed less and give us more money. That doesn't work so hot.
And the state estimates for our local option meals and hotel have always been low.
Yeah.
So, and it's substantially so in some cases.
Do we have any new restaurants coming in under 9?
Apparently the vegan place is going to be opening in
Oh,
the next
yeah.
couple of weeks.
Oh, where's that going to be?
Where the Seven Sisters
My
formerly
daughter will be
stood.
there. Vegan.
Yeah.
I bet you that gets a lot of
That's a good
business, to be
deal.
honest with you.
It's farm to table too.
Yeah.
There's a couple of liquor licenses that are in development, some with food, some without food. But there's an opportunity there.
Not to open a can of worms, but do we know more concretely if the gas moratorium has stifled any kind of new growth with businesses, restaurants?
Molly and I had a conversation with Berkshire Gas Company in the area, Amherst Area Chamber of Commerce, on long-term and short-term solutions with the gas moratorium. You know, if you listen to Berkshire Gas Company, the only long-term solution is to build a new pipe, and so we recognize that's many years away. But we did explore a number of short-term solutions, and there's some ideas that we're kicking around between Hadley, Amherst, and Berkshire Gas Company that could be an incentive for people to develop with the idea that they would convert to gas later down the road. Amherst is in the enviable position of being able to offer tax incremental financing. We're not in that same game, but we can look at that again, see if our numbers will allow us to do that. But the tax break in order to build new and employ people, that might make the difference with some of these.
But there'll be one-offs, you know, business here, business there, which is still better than what we have right now.
Yeah,
But in terms of an actual lifting of the moratorium, we can't even be thinking about it based
Right.
on Berkshire Gas. The very, very drop dead earliest we might see any relief is 2019, and that's aggressive. So
yeah.
more
Now-
likely
I
2020.
wouldn't hold my breath.
Can the town put pressure on them to say, look, you guys didn't, prepare well to grow, and now we're stuck because of you?
Let's have a coffee and I'll give you the whole story.
So I'm wondering
Trust
if
me,
we have enough
everything's been
information
applied
and if
that
it's
can
been
be,
long
including
enough
litigation.
that we can,
I don't think you can
we
say
see
that.
the numbers of the impact of the gas moratorium on, growth in business and stuff. Or has it
Right.
Not quite been long enough, just so we can, when we're looking at the budget and, try and go year over year, if we have that as a reference.
I've offered testimony to DPU at the hearing, but I don't have quantitative, so I'm using anecdotal information, things that I hear from the building department. But yes, I think as this goes on, we will be able to collect the data that will give us a better opportunity to talk about actual impact in terms of jobs not created, in terms of buildings not built, in terms of tax revenue not coming in.
So still what I'm hearing is we can get a little bit here and a little bit there and a little bit there and a little bit there. And
Well, how about we talk about the OPEB?
Yes.
And we can maybe,
make
are
that the
we,
fallback.
are we doing it in the fall, or you have it all in here? It looks like it's all in here, but then I looked and I'm like, oh, is it in the fall?
I always recommend that we do it at the annual town meeting. And we historically have deferred that to the fall town meeting. I think it's great that we have it baked into the budget. That's a step forward from where we were a few years back when it was handled as a separate article. But getting it into the budget was a good first step. The next step that I would like to see us do is to get that funded at the annual town meeting. But if we have to defer it, you and I don't agree that we should defer it, but if you have to defer it, that's one opportunity.
Well, that's also, we're using one-time free cash to fund that.
Right.
And if you were to free it up by not funding OPEB, you're using one-time free cash for
Mhm.
operating, which we
Don't
don't want to do.
Right.
Yep.
Practically speaking, I usually don't end up doing the funding until the second half of the year, and there's reasons for that, because we do our borrowing towards the end of the year, so we want as much cash available in our accounts to cover the items we're purchasing before we actually go out to borrow on the
Mhm.
capital. So cash flow wise, it wouldn't make a difference. I know there's other considerations, but this year I do 5 payments generally, January through May, or whatever 5 months in there are between there and the end of the year. However, yes, I think my emphasis is always, it makes a difference. Our liability is going down each year, so far, each evaluation, by more than what we're actually putting in, because we have the investment in there. and we're a small enough town so that if we do get into trouble, we don't quickly have another option of how we're going to do it. We need to keep up with the payments, or else we will get into bigger trouble later down the road. This is one of those, we're doing this for the future. It's hard to feel it in the present, but every time you're taking on new employees, and that's what you're talking tonight, that is increasing our OPEB. So we get more behind if we're taking from OPEB and hiring more staff. That's a double. You're doing yeah. So we have to at least keep up with those that we have on board at this time.
So
And-
something I've been thinking about, and one of the reasons I was asking about the moratorium is more in the next kind of fiscal year opportunities for increasing revenues. If we could maybe cut what fire's asking for in half and start funding them January 1st.
Mhm.
So cut that down to 100,000, give them half a year.
Mm.
If we've identified any opportunities so that by 19 we might have that. So obviously the moratorium's going to be a ways away before any
That was the
progress is made
idea,
on that.
deferring it to the fall.
So then I'm also, UMass, if that's being negotiated in December, so I'm trying to think ahead to 19 to maybe make this a little easier to deal with now, although it is a bit kicking the can,
Mhm.
but just where my head's at.
We may pick up small pieces of revenue to add to enhance this, but we have no idea about the big picture, what's happened on the federal level, and how is it going to affect the state budget. That could have such an adverse effect on all cities and towns in Massachusetts. And Governor Baker's not telling us anything right now because he doesn't know. So there's
But that's
there's
another what if though.
that's
Right.
another problematic area,
That's
yeah,
another one.
for us,
And the chief is saying that logically he needs all four
At
to
least
make
three.
it work, or at least three.
Yeah.
And I can see
You
that.
try to make it work with three, but.
But he wants all. He wants all
If you're
four.
gonna do it, let's try.
All right, so I'm going to ask another what if question. Let's say that we want to take this money and we're going to ask the taxpayers to pay for it. What's the typical increase that you might see on the mill rate to cover $217,000?
Easy figuring would be 10 cents for every 100,000, so it'd be 20 cents
20 cents on the mill rate.
on the mill rate. That's easy figuring numbers.
That's an override.
Well, yeah, but
That's,
Donald rightly is asking where this money's going to come from, so that's one place it could come from.
Mhm.
So then, again, not necessarily in anticipation of that, but it would make it a little more palatable. We start funding them, January. I'm just still floating this idea out there, doing half the year, only have to come up with 100,000. Eventually, would have to come up with the 200, but it's more palatable to the voters, perhaps, if they see these services that they're getting.
It doesn't
already
really work
implemented.
well for the fire department though.
Right,
to
they can't
have-
use it.
Right.
It's not working well. They
That's right.
ask for either, if we're not gonna do it now, maybe do it later, but not to split it.
Well, not in terms of doing two, staff instead of four. I'm saying give them essentially 110,000 starting in January, so over 6 months they'll be operating as is, and then
you
they'll
run
up their
into
staff by
employment
4
benefit
come January 1st.
There's no grants that the fire department can apply for.
safer grant.
They did apply for one in
They
the
applied for the SAFER grant, which would have taken care of 4 personnel,
So,
and they were refused and said, we have too much money in all of our accounts. That's why we were denied.
It's funny that we have too much
obviously
money there.
they don't look at what we have to pay out to know that we don't really have a lot of money in our accounts.
No, we do. We have school choice money, we have CPA money,
Okay.
we have
The tax rate.
stabilization
I know.
money. Those are all assets.
I'm not for
you
an
know.
override for this because we're already,
Well, it's
These
a
town
what if
people.
question. It's a what if
I know.
question.
Let's
I
not
want
go
to know
there,
what
though.
the consequence is if you say you're going to do something. I want to know what the consequence is. I
I
mean,
think
Hadley
The
has one of the
average
lowest
household-
tax
for the
rates in.
average household, it'd be about $75 a year.
Okay, so that's what we're talking about. And so, as I learned earlier, that Hadley pays one of the lightest property tax values in the
Rates.
state.
Rates.
Well, yeah, but it's
The values are relatively, they're higher than the norm in this part of the area, but the rate is lower.
yeah.
so why is it that, I don't know if you're opening a can of worms, the
Go ahead.
businesses are taxed the same rate, are they?
Yes.
We have
And
one
that
rate
is
system.
because, why?
You have an opportunity
I don't know,
to,
I'm sorry, not you, Molly.
every year the select board votes on whether to keep a unified rate single rate for commercial, industrial, personal property as well as residential agricultural? Or do we split the rate so that we're shifting the burden away from the residential agricultural and onto residential open space, onto the commercial, industrial, personal property? So every year you make that decision. Every year the recommendation has been consistent and strong that you should keep a unified tax rate. There are two reasons for this, one of which is that you don't enhance taxes by one dime by shifting the burden around, so you're not making any money. And the only thing you're going to do is you're going to hit your small businesses, and you're going to generate lawsuits out of the larger businesses who will appeal your tax decision. So you're going to hurt the mom and pop store. You're going to get lawsuits, and you're not going to get a dime extra out of it. So,
However,
howsoever.
so the however in that is, I agree with everything David said. It doesn't increase the pie.
Right.
But if you shift the tax burden and you're contemplating that you need to make the pie bigger via an override, what happens is that at the outset, the residential homeowner almost artificially sees a decrease in their taxes as the commercial side picks up more of it. And then if you were to come in and ask for an override, you'd be bringing the residential kind of back up to what they were paying before anyway, and more burden has shifted to the commercial side. Not a recommendation by any means, I'm just saying, because, so one of the things we've talked about is getting this on the agenda for the select board to really get a keener understanding of what strategies might we employ if in fact we're feeling like the pie just has to get bigger and Prop 2.5 isn't cutting it. So there are pros and cons to it, but we really need to have a focused discussion on this, and I'm sure you guys are going to want to be there for that when it happens too.
I guess
On the adverse,
Yeah.
what ends up happening is if the makeup of the select board changes and they decide to go back to single rate, the residential rate
Boing.
skyrockets.
Yeah.
Skyrockets.
Right.
That's why the recommendation
Has
has
always been.
typically
Always
been
been,
made to
right.
stay at a single rate because you don't want your tax rate,
Like an accordion effect, yeah,
Right.
so.
right.
Everybody thinks the commercial district is making a lot of money. They're having a real tough time now competing against Amazon. That's why the Hampshire Mall is converting over from big box stores to an entertainment mall to compete. If we start raising the taxes on the commercial sector, you would see a lot of businesses closing, and then we would lose revenues. So we don't want to do that. We almost lost JCPenney's. Luckily, they survived and stayed, but multitudes of other ones were closed. Lanesboro Mall lost their JCPenney's. And that's not too far away from us. We're fortunate they stayed. We could have lost them.
Well, we lost Best Buy and
Well, it would help if the owners didn't keep raising the rents over there either, to make
That's
it
why
very
JCPenney
difficult for them.
remains, is because they came in at a very lengthy lease
Long-term lease.
that was
Yeah.
really inexpensive.
well, I mean,
Right.
We
that
won't
mall
see JCPenney out of there unless JCPenney
tanks completely.
tanks completely.
Well, good for them.
And the big thing for the mall is what we talked about earlier, the moratorium on gas. They can't put any new restaurants in there. They'd love to. They have people knocking their doors down, but they can't do it. So.
I mean, the foot traffic in that mall is abysmally low.
Right, yeah.
So I have one more question, and I'm gonna ask this to Molly because I had discussed this with you before.
Aren't you glad you came?
I was gonna
Don't do
send
that
you an
again.
email. Has the town considered looking at the insurance again? Remember, it was a question,
Health insurance or something?
yes, on the health insurance, if there was ways of saving funding there.
So I talked to David about, again, we're trying to, get through town meeting, but we're already like lining up these conversations for after.
Mm-hmm.
So Joe Shea is the director of the Hampshire Franklin Trust, is that what it's called?
Group insurance.
Yep, and I saw Joe a few weeks back or whatever and asked if he'd be willing to come in, and he said, yeah, he does. I haven't been in to see you guys in a while, so he wants to come in front of the select board anyway. And he's a wonderful person to, and you know, obviously treasurer's office would be heavily involved in that conversation too. My understanding is that the last time it was looked at, there was a lot of conversation across all the municipalities about what burden percentage the employees were picking up versus what the employer was paying. And I think that Hadley's already kind of at the,
We're on the low end. The statutory limit is
50%.
50/50. We're at 65/35.
right.
But
So-
most other towns are at least 75 or higher.
So Joe said one of the things to talk about is there have been many municipalities that have made changes over the past 5 years or so he wants to give us updated competitive information. Again, not a recommendation, but just make sure that all the facts are in front of us. So it's certainly something to look at.
You also have to understand the trust in the last 2 years has lost $9 million because of catastrophic cases and things of that nature. They're looking at increasing co-pays, increasing deductibles for everybody. The trust has 89 cities and towns in their trust, not just little old Hadley. They're very large, you know, and they're one of the best run trusts in the country. It's better than GIC, the Mass Plan, the way they're run, right?
I'd challenge I wouldn't use the word lost money. The trust, the claims experience, to your
This is
point,
where they lost it
is
with claims.
significant. So because
Yeah.
the claims went up so much, they're having to relook. But even with that claims experience, they have stopgap policies and things in place, so it's very well run. But it does show you the
Loss
impact
ratio
of
was just impact.
exactly, yeah. So, but I mean, they're still quite
Yeah.
solvent and in great shape.
Yeah, they had 27 million, they're down to 19 in reserves, I'm referring to. So it's still, they have a lot in reserves. And we've also done well, David can attest to this, the amount of money we saved from the mass insurance, MIA, right? We've saved almost $100,000 there, right?
100,000? No.
Oh.
But 20,000. Let's call it 20.
Yeah, but over a period of time, I'm not referring to 1 year.
Oh, yeah.
Does the select board
Yeah.
have like
It
a
hasn't been
to-do,
100,000.
because the insurance thing was a couple years ago.
Yep.
That was discussed, you know. So is the select board have like a wish list type thing of what you would like to see worked on and categorized as A, B, C, D?
Well, I think, you know, again, just from had an election. So again, the composition can always change in April of every year. So once we got through that, we've got town meeting right in front of us. But then in terms of setting the agenda, the conversations I've been having with David first, and then it will come back to the full select board, are to prioritize, what I'll refer to as information gathering. And again, look at the big line items, right? Because I think to your point, if we're going to affect any sort of change, like Donald's saying, in terms of cost structure, we can keep nickel and diming the collector's office and the treasurer's office, but it's not going to really matter. I mean, we have to look at where we're spending the majority of the money, and that is in human capital.
That's right. And the only
Right.
reason I ask is because this was discussed a couple years ago.
And at the
And-
time it was looked at, and in the context of the
And I don't remember discussion
union
about it.
negotiations were going on at the time, and there was a discussion, but the school was in flux, so we had the interim superintendent leaving, a new superintendent coming on. And so I think that the conversation didn't get too far because of the change in leadership and the like, but I think
There's
we're
a lot of constrictions.
Well, I also think we were waiting for this report to come out.
Yeah,
too.
That's it.
that's right.
I think most of the answers are in there to all those questions. What we should be doing. But again, the money thing is the aspect.
And with all that
Can't
said,
do
even
it.
if we can try to increase revenues in all these ways, I don't think we're going to see much of that in FY18, right? I mean, maybe
Correct.
optimistically halfway through the year again, but You know, so when we're tackling $217,000, we can keep talking revenues and big picture, which is great, and that's the work we'll have cut out for us over the year.
Mhm.
But I'm still looking at 217 and have to whittle that down. So I'll push it one last time. Maybe I'm talking nonsensically, but if we cut it in half, start it in January, they're getting 4 staff members, which is what they wanted, even a little late. David can renegotiate, maybe get 10, 20,000 if that's optimistic.
Mhm.
So now we're looking at 80,000 that we have to get for this year. If we have to talk override for the next year, then that conversation has to happen. Maybe it's part of a larger kind of picture. But we could whittle that down with this plan to 80,000 for this year, optimistically, by starting them off in January. And I think that's easier to kind of get to with, you know, a couple cuts, and that way we don't have to talk revenue. We can maybe take another look at the line items.
Mhm.
So.
Overrides. The town has never passed a budget override. We've passed many overrides in the capital area, the debt
General
exclusion
override.
overrides. We love those because because they go away, and you pay off your debt and you go away, and you get this fresh start every few years. You get to cycle in whether you want to buy these new items or not, because if you don't buy them, your taxes will go down. And so far, we're certainly in a cycle where people are enthusiastic about buying capital items. There are different kinds of overrides which don't need to be for the budget, but they can relieve the budget if we did a capital stabilization override. And so capital items that might either come into the budget or be paid for out of free cash could now be directed from another source of funding, which would be, we're doing a capital override for a capital stabilization to spend on these capital items, therefore we've got the rest of our cash we can use on the budget. And the other thing I'd say about a budget override, I'm not saying the town wouldn't pass it, because the town certainly is changing character as these years pass, and they're as our town changes, so are the people who live in this town changing. Maybe they do want to do an override, but I don't think they're going to want to do it every year. So I think that when you go for a budget override, you have to be really careful that you have not done an override for
Right.
$217,000 because you want it for the fire department this year. This is the time, as if you've been listening to these departments over the last few years saying, we're really crunched, and someday we're going to need HR, someday we're going to need IT, someday we're going to need a planning director because that's phasing out. These things I think need to be brought into one, and maybe then you're looking for a larger but very well planned budget override. You're not going to leave the school out, I don't think, if you're going for an override. They've held themselves back. They've knocked that budget way back, knowing that we weren't going to go for an override at this time. So I think when you're going to open that door saying we're considering a budget override, you have to do everything you can to make sure that our budget's as efficient as it can be, and that you've gone ahead and taken count of the needs across the board, and it helps get it passed, and it helps limit opposition.
Right, and to that point, while it might be kicking the can, again, if we can get that extra 20,000 from UMass, we can find 80,000 at least for this year. We'll presumably still have that for the next year.
Yeah.
So even though we'll be sitting here again, it'll be with 100,000, not 200,000.
About UMass.
Yeah, maybe I'm
I've
being much too
sat in the
optimistic.
room with David. Basically, Chancellor Subaswamy walked into the room and said, "Tell me about that library annex that didn't fly in town. And by the way, we're not planning on increasing any money. More than happy to help you in any other way we can, but don't be looking for $1." Now, that doesn't mean that the conversation could be different come December, but we can't assume we're going to be able to kick it up $20,000 a week. So we had a pretty darn good argument last time as to why we should be getting more than the 55.
Yeah,
So I just don't want to.
Oh, yeah.
Plan.
Like,
There are
comment on
some
it.
conditions at UMass that are different now with the new LNG plant that's gone in, and the headaches that's given our fire chief,
Yeah.
so
Again, we can make a good argument.
it would make a good argument.
Well, but if he just refuses to, then we just refuse our services? I mean,
Well, that's the thing. I mean,
Well,
we
no,
don't really have
we're
enough.
required to provide
Yeah.
them.
We don't have.
But,
not that
but
easy.
the other consideration is you don't want to hire 4 new firemen and fund them for a half a year
well, that's right. 'cause
and
this-
then say,
See ya.
we didn't come up with the money.
Right.
That type of thing, I think people in Hadley, and I hear this daily. No overrides, specifically, no general overrides. I want to know where my money's going. They like a shopping list,
Right.
just like happened at the last override vote.
Mhm.
They picked what they wanted, what they didn't. So, this needs to come into the budget, and where you need to do other things, maybe where your tweaking needs to happen. But, I mean, I wouldn't expect to hire 4 firefighters and in a half a year say, we couldn't find the funding for you.
So I think that's where we're having the conversation about revenue streams in the short term when we're
Exactly,
talking about agendas,
exactly.
but that would all be for FY19. But I
Well-
don't want to have to wait until FY19 to hire those firefighters if we can maybe find 100,000 this year, more realistically.
There's a revenue source that we haven't talked about that's very hypothetical, and that's the medical marijuana.
2%, yeah.
It's not the 2%, that would be the recreational. We have a community impact agreement for 50,000 for the medical marijuana dispensary. Now that project has been hung in irons because of a legal issue. That seems to have been resolved. I'm not 100% sure of that. But as of January, I didn't feel comfortable putting that $50,000 in the revenue stream because I didn't know where that whole thing was going to go. We could take another look at that, as whether that's more probable than not that that's going to happen.
And if that type of income comes into play, I don't know, I just kind of see that with this medical marijuana and marijuana people using in that, it's going to increase our police services and
That's what the nature of the
And
fee is
perhaps
for.
fire.
We want
and,
to-
So there you go.
fire, and it might
Yeah,
exceed
right.
$50,000.
Just a lot.
So rightfully we can
Well,
put it
no,
towards
and
fire.
in response to,
Yeah.
to medical emergencies is
I agree.
what I was
And-
more.
And the reason I bring up, I know we have to focus on 18, but in my past few years with the board, there are things that we've discussed that the select board we're going to work on, and eventually these things have to happen, and we have to get a good handle on our budget, so we can a really good handle on this budget, so that if we do need to do an override, we can sell it to these people. And if we can't get a good handle on the budget, and maybe making a 3-year agenda or something to say, over the next 3 years, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, or this is going to happen, we're not going to be able to sell that or any override to the people, and nor would I ask them for it.
And that's what we
Nor
committed
would
to
I
the
ask
town
them
meeting.
for it.
We committed to that and said that we are working on a multi-year plan and that we will be coming back to you with that. And
Right.
It hasn't been delivered yet.
Exactly, and so this is why I'm asking these questions, where are we at? Because to sell, to be able to ask somebody to give us more money, regardless it's 10 cents or $75, I gotta be able to stand there and sell this to them and feel confident in what I'm saying to them. And we can't get a handle on our own, this budget to be able to ask them for more money.
And I agree, which is why I want to get us farther from the override. But if right now it's 217 and we can't find that, what are our other options? That would be the last resort. I wouldn't want it to get there, at least not for this year.
Mhm.
And looking for next year, I don't want it to get to an override, but if we can tackle 80 to 100,000 this year,
Right.
and then increase revenues, have all these strategies and plans, and then find another 100,000 next year, it'll
Well, but
never
the
have to
problem
come
is
to override.
you're going to have 217 extra every year. Becomes part of the fire department's
Right,
annual
but
budget.
the 80 to 100 we find now will stay in the budget.
And increasing
for-
because
Right.
people get raises and whatnot.
Right, but the 80 to 100 that we're finding right now will be still there for next year. So our
Right.
next year's task won't be 200, it will be 100.
I mean, what's the cost of somebody dying because the chief was there by himself?
Our intentions have always been noble, but something the collector's office said 2 weeks ago really stuck in my mind. She got the first computers and we're gonna update them all on an annual basis, everybody in the town hall. It's been 8 years since hers have been updated,
That's right.
but our intentions were to do them on an annual basis.
Well,
Move around and get
a
them done.
rotating basis.
Yeah, rotating, but it's been 8 years since hers been updated.
David?
So let me just summarize where I think we are. We have 3 options on the table for the 217,000. There's option A, which is we defer this to the fall town meeting and try to fund the full amount at the full town meeting. There's option B, which is that we fund half of it for starting January 1st, 2018. And the third option is the one that I suggested, which is that we decrease OPEB and fund half of the position for July 1st.
I go with A.
So
Um,
you fund
did
half
I-
the
did I-
position and you, for July 1st, and then the other half of the, during, hoping for fall?
No, I didn't think it was gonna work that way.
Oh, so you would only fund half of the fire?
Right, which doesn't seem like it's gonna
It's
work if
not
he needs
logical.
three.
Right,
For
that
them.
was
Yeah, I
not,
mean, unless you had a different conversation with Mike than I did,
Yeah.
didn't
I'm
you
just-
talk to him about that?
I'm just laying out the options here. I'm not saying any of them
Right.
are good options.
I mean, it would be important to have the chief on.
In the select,
Right.
and
I mean, you
Yeah,
might be
like
able to
two
decrease
options,
him, you might be able to decrease him to like 200 instead of 217, because maybe he only has, you know, gets the 3 people instead of the 4.
Mhm.
And maybe, you know, you do have some other increases in the revenue too,
Mhm.
as you talked about. And and if you put off part of OPEB, like you said. I mean, if you add up all those might work.
I'm for waiting to the fall. I mean, because you got a lot of what ifs. And maybe we can't find, 40,000 here, 50,000 here. And if he's willing to wait to the fall, and so we can look at it then and maybe have a better idea of what we need to do overall. Because once you implement it into the budget,
it's there forever.
it's there forever. And do I agree? Safety, absolutely. It's too bad that we couldn't pull it out of some other operating funds, to be able to support that. But the what ifs, just like free cash, we gotta rely. Hopefully, we'll have this to be able to fund this, and there's just too many what ifs.
We've been decreasing free cash, so.
Right,
I
and
don't
so
think you're gonna have
not-
a whole lot in fall.
Exactly. So not
Just
only one,
preliminary
we want to
numbers,
try
right.
to get rid of the free cash thing slowly and surely, and not rely on those things. And now we're increasing our budget by 200,000. And this is where I'm saying that we don't have a handle on the whole picture, the big picture. And we need to set a plan, not just for this year, but for 3 years. Down the road. Somehow implement it all in there and figure out how are we going to do this. We're going to cut funds here. Or we're gonna, maybe look at the insurance. Maybe we can save some money there. Who knows? And a lot of that insurance too is retirees, correct? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, there's lots of things that we have to look at, and so
So even if we kick it off to the fall, I mean, even if revenues are going to be looking better, we won't realize much of that in 18. We'll still have the full 217 defined in the budget. So even if we're being idealistic to assume the revenues will be there, we'll still have half a year to get through. And by the time you can actually, hire and make full use of what we've allocated, it'll be January 1st anyway. So if we're very committed to funding fire up to 217 at some point in some way, then I wouldn't see a reason to not try and get what we can now to fund half of it, at the least. If there's a real question that if it came to the fall town meeting, maybe we can't find the money, maybe we don't give fire a dime more. But it sounds like we're all pretty resolute in making sure we find that 217 at some point soon.
right.
So
Well, is that so? You have to explain to me now how you bring things up at town meeting. Is it possible to bring it up at town meeting and just ask the taxpayers what they want to do? Do they want to have a tiny fire department that's not going to be able to help them, or do they want a full working fire department?
I think we need to exhibit a certain amount of leadership, because you never want to throw a jump ball out to 150 to 200 people.
That's right.
Who happen to show up that night, who
Mhm.
don't have all the facts.
Right. Yeah,
So,
that's
from
it. So
a leadership
you have,
standpoint,
you have to
gotta
sell it to them.
put it all in a.
I think putting it off to the fall would just give us the time to be more factual of looking at it, and just because it's just being thrown at us right now, to come up with a solution
Well, if
quickly overnight. And I think just by putting it off, if the chief is willing to wait or able to wait, I mean, if I had the money staff 6 more people, I would give it to them, you know? But you're looking at safety, and so here I'm thinking school. Well, the school budget, you know, can they afford to give some money towards this? Because it's all about safety and huge thing, you know, with the kids and how many times are we going there? And there's other departments, you know, that might be having funding. So can we take some money from there? You know, but you don't want to do that. I'm just saying school as an example. I don't want anybody dislike me for
I'm
that.
gonna move over a little.
I'm all for Hadley Public Schools, so. Which is true. I had 3 kids go through there.
It's a public service
But you have to,
announcement.
you have to bring up the conversation
You
about
do.
essential services.
That's right. So I'm just thinking, you know, we're
So,
expected in
and that's
one
a tough
night,
one.
in a couple hours, figure out where we're gonna get this. The select board really hasn't sat and discussed it either, right? I mean, it's on your
Well-
agenda to do that, or?
No, we have, but we recognize that,
Ongoing.
you know.
Right.
Yeah, it's on an ongoing basis because we recognize that the revenues clearly weren't there in the
Yeah.
absence of something dramatic for us to be able
Right.
to fund that. So once the schools said, you know, we thought it was more of an imminent issue because the schools
Right.
were also looking for
For
300, so we already
right.
had about a $500,000 shortfall.
Mhm.
When the schools said, okay, our numbers are moving around enough, we're not happy, but we can let these things shake out while we all figure this out together.
Right.
Then that was when I think, you know, we thought, okay, we'll take one more pass at it, see if you guys came up with anything that, you know, we hadn't thought of, or, you know, any creative ideas came out.
Well, it sounds like all the creative ideas have come out over the years, and that where it is what it is.
Without making dramatic structural shifts to how we deliver services today, and then you're talking people.
Right.
And the part that really scares me about, without providing dedicated revenue for these fire positions, and then all of a sudden, after 6 months, we find out we haven't got the funding for them. So then we have to lay them off. We lose 3 positions if that's how much we're gonna do. They all gonna go on unemployment because we pay dollar for dollar when they start collecting unemployment. So we lose the position and we're gonna pay for the position anyways.
Anyways, yeah.
So, you know, that's what really scares me without dedicated funding.
I did at least want to take a crack at it. I mean, I would think it'd be a shame if we can buckle down and find 100,000, but that's only half of the way there, but then,
And then are you suggesting then we try to find, if it comes up at fall and we do have it available to
at the
then
least,
do the
yeah.
rest?
But
Yeah,
Now,
it's a good start.
I do think that you could, there are some
But
spots
arguably,
in
if you
here,
can-
arguably
If you
some
can
spots.
cut it down now, why would you wait until
Right.
fall anyway?
Now,
But-
the question I think would be, would the chief think about that? You know, would he, you know, to me, I would think maybe having one person right now might be helpful. It gets him through summer vacations, you know, just so he can have a summer vacation. If he had one person now, and then we deal with the rest of it at the fall. But, you know,
Especially if that person could do inspections, got trained to do inspections and start bringing
absolutely.
some more money, or I don't know whether it would be more money or coming in sooner or what, David. I think I'm not quite sure how it's running, but I know that
I mean,
they do generate revenue.
Absolutely.
In addition to
You have
fires,
inspections,
yeah.
then they could be looking for grants too. I mean, he can't do anything because all he's doing is running around
He's
trying.
doing, yeah, he's doing everything,
Doing
and
everything.
there's a new building on the line
Yeah.
too, and that takes time.
And I can't imagine
Yeah.
if money was offered to the fire chief, I don't think he's gonna
He
say,
wouldn't turn it
oh,
down."
please, no, you know.
I'd rather wait.
So
I
I'd
think
like
it
to
just needs to be clear that he wouldn't be,
guaranteed.
and he wouldn't be staffing
No.
the full, you know,
floor.
it's
full-
not
full-time
getting,
force.
it's not resolving the issue, it clearly would be
We know,
a bit
yeah.
of a Band-Aid. Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think he needs
Well,
to
maybe
know that
Band-Aid's
we're
okay.
committed to him to do the whole, you know, to look at it and not just give him a little bit. Because I think he would not be happy with just a little bit, but that we're committed to find it, just can't find it yet. I mean, I like that idea of trying to, because I can see, I mean, even we could definitely see, I can see us increasing a few of these items and be conservative and like you said for the excise tax, I also think you could probably increase the police receipts, like because they are able to do these things now a little bit, to even just to match the fire receipts. Cause, I mean, they're less than the fire department's doing. And now that they have the staff, so I mean, I think there's some money right there.
Is there any money in accounts out there that was targeted for maybe a roof or something and never got done, or things that are
Yeah.
not?
So that's one of your articles, that we're returning those monies back to the pots they came from.
How much is that?
Which is Article 4 or 5.
Article 7, I think it is.
Every single town meeting, Terry, every now,
Yeah.
Yeah.
we do a sweep at this point, for the last 3 meetings, so going in and finding everything that's still sitting in
So then
there.
where does that go? I mean,
Wherever it came
like in
from.
here, in
So if it
revenue.
came out of free cash, it goes back to free cash. If
Yeah,
it came
Article-
out of, wherever it was voted out
Oh.
from, it will go back to
back
that
into.
source.
Thank you.
So limited flexibility,
So it's
but
going to
Yeah.
stay with the free cash, right?
Oh.
We're giving back 23,000 to CPA.
Yep.
Can we ask them to fund it towards the fire department?
we ask them to put it in capital.
Can we do something with that?
Only if it's historical
I
space,
know, I'm just
affordable
saying.
housing or recreation.
Well, it could be a historical building that goes on fire. There's something, you know what I'm saying? Just a thought.
Alright, so,
So it hasn't, they don't,
No,
it
it
doesn't
doesn't help.
increase free cash much this
Right,
time.
it's
Yeah.
only 2,500.
Oh, yeah.
Not much.
yeah,
Not much.
so there's not that much there.
No, it is just the upper block. The second one is more housekeeping, just to keep things,
When
get
is-
things off the books. So it's the upper block.
Do we have time to meet, are we meeting again before the,
Your next scheduled meeting is gonna be the May 3rd, which is the same time as the select board.
oh, right,
And that's the day before town meeting,
That's the
right?
day before town meeting.
right,
And that's just to get our act together to what we're gonna say and do in town meeting.
right.
We gotta make a decision on this one way or another.
Then there's the hearing next Wednesday night.
Yeah, next Wednesday is the
And
hearing.
So you'll get a lot of
Yeah,
perhaps
unfortunately, I can't
feedback,
attend
hearing
that.
from people.
I
that
would
night.
think we'd need a decision for the forum. Right? How
We
they
can-
would,
I don't see
so
any
we could
reason why
present
we
it to
can't
the
go to
public.
people. We can go to the public and say, we're still working on this, trying to be as responsible as possible with the service needs that are evident and the tax dollars that are available. I don't see any reason why we can't say that.
Yeah, and acknowledge we are, recognize you've already committed
Yeah.
through
Right.
previous votes to an increase
I
in
mean,
taxes, and,
Yeah.
you know.
Just a little bit of history, not that I'm recommending this in the slightest, but we have been 5 minutes away from walking into a town meeting and we're still working on the budget.
I
Yeah,
remember
I-
that
I
in
really-
your office.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's not suggest that.
Yeah.
Because
No,
that-
but it happens.
It was not pretty.
Well, I was just
No.
wondering if we could meet with, the chief, I mean, do we have time to meet with Mr. Spanknagel?
Well, what do we need to meet with them about?
Well, I mean, what is the bottom line that he can,
Well, he knows what we,
Light a
we know
fire in
what
the
he
basket.
needs. We know he wants the 217. We know.
I know, but
Can he live with half?
can
But
we,
can he
can he
live
live
with
with
it?
one?
What would he do
or
with one?
half?
Yeah.
Will he be able to do something with that?
Well,
Again, I'm sure you can do something with it, but just as a Band-Aid, I mean, it's not.
Yes, it is a Band-Aid, but that's
Are you texting?
the way
by any
we're
chance?
rolling with it right now, right? I mean, I would feel more comfortable him saying, yes, I think I could, live with the one person right now, and
At fall town meeting.
at fall town meeting, we'll have more of a
Add two more.
solid, right, we'll have more of a bigger picture.
I just
in a
worry that,
sense.
that the
I
town
know.
would then say, well, he just got a guy.
Well,
You know?
again, you have to make it clear in the talking points.
Exactly.
People are pretty good about remembering what
Yeah.
they said, because
Yeah.
it's usually the same.
It's about the big
people.
picture.
Yeah.
And-
Yeah, I
I
mean,
mean, because
the
what,
bigger picture.
what I heard here tonight, what it boils down to is that the pie needs to get a little bigger. That, is that, you know, because we've robbed from Peter to pay Paul as much as we can do that.
Unless you just put the whole thing off to the fall meeting.
Well, I mean, the chief came to the select board meeting because he needs.
Well, a lot of
This
people
stuff,
go to
right?
the select board meeting and they need things, but, you know,
Well, yeah, but
it's not
if somebody comes
necessarily
and
gonna
tells me they
happen.
need more basketballs, I'm like, okay, well, whatever. But when the fire chief comes and says,
When they
you
run
can't,
into an accident, they're really not
you know,
staffed properly.
That's right.
I understand that, but
Yeah.
this is not like the first that we've known about it.
I know.
It's,
I mean, this is third
It's-
year that he
exactly.
keeps getting dinged by
He
the
keeps asking and asking, and
fire,
I wanna give it to him, but we have to have
the funding to do it.
the funding to do it. And I'm not saying, maybe we do have the funding, but
I mean, we're
Do you have
talking
an idea of where
$75
these numbers will come
per
from?
household roughly. On a, I don't know,
Can I-
I pay a lot more than that.
can I ask you what your suggestion might be,
Well,
please?
I think the only way it's gonna come from one place, honestly, is an override, and I don't think it's enough for the kind of override that we need at this point to solve the problem. Because I don't think you use a budget override
Mhm.
as a Band-Aid.
Mhm.
I think that would be a really bad idea. And the other way you get there is, it's by pieces. It is by, it's gonna be maybe 5,000 here, which they're not putting into stabilization, so you pick that up. And maybe it is a little here, a little there, a little combination of some things, finding out what's in a budget that could wait another year, and, you know, what the cost of that would be.
Well, do we put it out to the townsfolk on
We put-
what their feeling would be about a permanent override? Excuse me,
Yeah,
permanent
that's-
override to staff, specifically to staff the fire department?
But I mean, I
Can
think if we're gonna do it, we gotta do it once.
You're
and
right.
Do it right.
Yeah.
You're right.
So we need to have any other pieces filled in before
Right.
we can do that.
It does, it has to be
Yeah.
a one and done, because
Yeah.
So you would, that's where we're looking,
I
that
hear
we
it in my
need to
office
really
all the
look
time.
at the big picture, and which is gonna take time, it's not gonna happen in
And
5 minutes.
And ideally, at the same time that we're saying we need the full-time fire force, I'm just throwing this out, full-time fire force,
we need
human
HR,
resource manager,
IT.
information technology,
Right.
you know, whatever. We should also be saying, and we have worked very hard and are now suggesting that we no longer fund X, Y, and Z, because the taxpayers want to know that we have, like Sue was saying earlier, looked at everything
Mhm.
before we're coming to them for more money.
Mhm.
Because the,
Right.
you know, the concern will be, and people will say this, how do I know you're not just gonna be coming back? And even if we do
Mhm.
an override with a part of the override agreement being, you can lock yourself into not being able to come back for 3 years, 5 years, whatever.
Mhm.
There's that trust factor that has to be won over. And if they don't think that we have tried to make some difficult decisions and cuts elsewhere, and there's a perception of fluff anywhere,
And
it's
there-
not gonna pass.
And there has to be the understanding that they will have the 2.5% increase every year
Every year.
anyways,
Mhm.
Yeah.
but.
So there's a couple, just again, traffic control part of discussion. We've got 2 weeks before town meeting. The only thing that really needs to fall in place really is the budget. You can approach it with the idea that we can hammer it out tonight in the next hour or so. You can put together a small group to talk to the chief and maybe work some scenarios out to report to the larger group in open session. You could meet jointly with the select board and jointly work this out. So there's a couple of ways of doing this, and you'd still have time to do it.
David, if we need to, we're scheduled for the public hearing, or no, the information session at 7 o'clock, right?
7 o'clock.
And are we having a hearing that night, or no? The hearing's the
Yeah, the
third.
hearing is for the 4 poles on Lawrence Plain Road. That'll take about 5 minutes.
But that's scheduled for that night.
That's right,
So theoretically, we could start a meeting at 6:30
yes.
if you wanted to, and to
Mhm.
allow for more conversation with the fire department.
Right.
I'm also thinking that if we individually could go home in our time and kind of each come up with a different scenario and then meet back
Well, what do you mean, like, go,
of how it might be able to be done.
So-
I came up with my half and half idea.
Huh?
It's a
You
pretty
came-
tight budget, so yeah, it's my creative thinking contribution.
Well, so, quite frankly,
I'd like to try to work some of it out now, because I know that Frank, when I go home, my time is so tight, I won't spend a lot of time on it.
well, plus, I don't know that I have the experience to know which one of these line items is fluff or not. I mean, there's no fluff quotient on these numbers, so, you know, I can say, all right, well, we're gonna take it away from this, but that may be that may be stupid, and I have no way to judge that.
Well, we can
Right.
look at the actuals on some of the things and see what actually happened, like David has been doing, that's how he
Well,
does
that's,
a lot of his, the
that's how he's already
actuals,
gone through that.
and he's gone through it. But he's been conservative on a lot, so some of them that we can look at is which ones has he been really conservative on.
On revenues or?
On revenues.
Yeah, revenue, yeah.
Well, they're, revenues are an interesting thing. You don't really know what they are until they actually show up.
Yeah, that's the thing. Terry, you were talking about hypotheticals. Every single dime of all of the revenue sources is an estimate.
Right.
We won't know until about this time next year
Right.
whether they
If
were
it's
right
true
or
or
not.
not.
So, tax.
Like mine, it's behavior. That's all demand, $15 demands. Anybody who pays their bill late, $15 demand.
Right.
That fluctuates. It normally goes up, but.
We don't want that.
People can get all responsible and pay their bills on time.
And that's happened.
It's like we said, we charge high interest for overdue taxes, but that's not what we really want.
99% at this point. So I mean, our
Yeah, there's not a
collection
whole
rate
lot of fluff there.
Yeah.
But if they pay
Just take the day
15
off, that's the
days,
deadline.
They pay 15 days late.
So the third line down, the 142,275.
Where are you now?
This is revenue.
Revenues.
Oh,
This one.
So just before we
Yeah,
get into
revenue
revenues,
summary.
Sure.
trying to think about this. Even if we can be less conservative with these, and even if this goes great in the next hour, and even if we find $200,000,
or even 100.
even 100, but even if we find that $200,000 and we could say, great, we found 200,000, I feel like it puts us in a similar boat where because these numbers are so up in the air and we can't, even if we try to stretch it, that would still end up being, 4 jobs that we'd have to cut if these don't pan out. I mean, that's why I like being more conservative rather than otherwise. So I'm wondering what the end goal is in trying to look at revenues and being less conservative with
But
it.
once they're in here, once we have the fire in here, and you say, okay, well, it's not matching, we're gonna have to make cuts. We wouldn't necessarily make cuts to the fire, we might make cuts in other areas. Maybe the fire is not where you wanna make the cuts, we think it's
All right,
important.
but the idea I floated out would be
Right.
do the half and half, and then we're on the hook for a little more the next year.
Yeah,
And the idea is nobody liked that because then you'd have to fire the firefighters. The idea being that you couldn't just make cuts elsewhere. So that's why I'm trying
Yeah.
to think. It just seems like a very similar situation. That if we try to count on something not conservatively, if it doesn't pan out,
Then we're stuck again.
we're stuck in the same place again. Rather than just saying let's just do the 200 and we'll find it later. It sounds very similar, right? That's what we're saying here. We're just we'll count
Well,
on.
we're gonna
more
fudge this number up a little bit to make it look like we have the
and
money.
hope it pans out. Bottom line, it doesn't really change much, right? We're,
It doesn't give you more money.
right.
No.
You'd actually have to make cuts at some
But you're just
point.
relying on the expectation more heavily.
Right. Which at that point, I'm perfectly fine committing to that because I think that fire needs it and we will find the money or we will increase the revenues in some way. But that's what I was suggesting to begin with, and
Well-
people really.
The problem is the people vote on that and they could vote to not do it.
But if anything, that's more transparent, I think.
So maybe rather than $217,000, you go with Amy's goal of one person now and deal with everything else in the fall. It's almost what, you want everything else in the fall. You're talking about things that start, and I think Amy's got a good idea. So you're looking for less to
Then-
come out of additional revenues
Yeah.
and cuts to other departments if that's what you're.
I mean, I think I want to know from the chief if we say, you ask for 4 guys, you're getting 1 or 2. Does that work for you, or you just can't make that work at all?
Well, he's already said it wouldn't. And I think with a staffing issue, if you give somebody 1 person, you have to tell them, well, this is with the expectation of 4, because that's who he's going to hire for, right? But if you say you're getting 1 person, you're only getting 1 person, that's a different type of hire that he'll be considering. So if we're giving him 1 or 2 people, we would have to tell him with the expectation you will get 4 eventually.
yeah.
At
Yeah.
that point, we're putting ourselves on the hook anyway for 200,000 poor people.
I think you really have to talk to Mike.
Well, that's what I suggested.
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean,
It's no sense of giving him one if it's not gonna work for him. It's not, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
or two or three. That's why I'm thinking we need to sit with him and see what will work with him. We all wanna give it to him. I think everybody's in agreement that
Mm-hmm.
it
I'm
needs
in
to be
agreement with that,
done.
yeah.
Yep.
But we're all sitting here, well, ifs, all ifs, and, you know, I don't live by ifs, but I understand it's part of life at times, but I think we really need to talk to them to
Yeah.
see, will one person help you until we can figure out how we can support the other three? You know, no sense in doing it if it's not gonna help. Or if it's not
So-
gonna work
so
in
what-
his plan. You know, it's kinda, you know, the police department, I'm thinking, like, the police department, they have part-time police people. Do they have police, the part-time that maybe would like cross, you know what I mean?
It's
It could
both a
be
fireman
shared.
and a policeman at the same time.
Like a public safety budget instead.
Yeah,
Yeah, there are operational issues that we would have to iron out there.
yeah, but that's what I'm, you know, kinda
And
thinking.
that's what some smaller towns do. They even have
Yeah.
DPW workers who are also, you know, call force fire and that kind of.
Cause a lot of our volunteers
Well, I
might
think
work
she's
in a
right.
different department for the town, you know what I mean? Or
Just saying, that idea.
yeah.
the, you know, so I'm thinking that we need to look at the,
We need to brainstorm.
we need to brainstorm, and I think trying to do it right now without even talking to him, we know that we need to brainstorm about a lot of things, and that's on the agendas for, you know, the select board. We're all looking into different things down the road, because the next budget, we're gonna have to come up with another 220,000, whatever it may be, plus the shortfall already, you know, we're working on free cash things. So I think it's key to talk to him.
I
And
agree, and I think that if we go into it with that in mind, we should have some sense of our commitment level, right? I mean,
I think we're all committed.
but it's
To
a pretty
giving him
hard
what he
commitment
needs.
if we're going to tell him we'll give you 1 or 2 and you will get 4. I mean, that's a real staffing issue. He will be counting on that, right? I mean,
I get that, but I also get that we might not have the same revenue next year. You know, you just have to, there's no set, you know,
Well,
stone here.
I think we have to agree that if we allow him to hire a fireman or however number, that if we have a budget shortfall, it's gonna come from somewhere else, that we're not gonna lay off a fireman.
Well, I don't feel comfortable going to a different department and saying, okay, you gotta go now, because we're gonna keep the fire department.
Well, but you have attrition, right? People who retire and whatnot, and then you just don't replace them.
I understand that, and I get that. And so that's things that we have to look at too as well. I'm just saying there's lots of things that you have to look at. Is the commitment there? Yes, we will make it happen. How? We don't know right now.
that's fine. I just want to get us on the same page.
So,
We are, we've been
Commitment.
on the same page as far as we're committed to getting him his
Oh yeah,
employees.
they have fire training, yeah, that they have to
So,
do.
I mean, he may have a lag time in that as well with his
Right.
hiring, so.
Right. With the training.
Knowing that he's
I mean,
gonna
we
hire
still
someone, but
have
he's
to
not gonna
pay him,
actually
but-
get them until,
Well, no, I
Yeah.
think we pay for the training, don't we?
I think he'd try to hire somebody that already has their credentials somewhere else and they would transfer to Hadley.
I didn't
That
know
would
what
be his
plan
intention.
was, yeah.
I don't think he would have the time to train everybody in all those
But
hours.
there
Well,
again,
no,
it just
they would
underscores
go
the
to
need to talk
training.
to him,
Yeah.
so otherwise we're just gonna
Well,
speculate
right,
without
right.
him.
Right.
Exactly.
so did I hear you, maybe I misunderstood, did I hear you say that your small group was gonna meet with the chief and then report back to the
yeah, I think that's a good
finance
idea.
committee
Mm-hmm.
next week, maybe in advance of the,
We could schedule the select board meeting to start at 6,
yeah.
and that would give us, 45 minutes or whatever. We do that little poll hearing thing, and then we can
Right.
go right into the session.
Right.
Well, but hang on a second. So we're gonna meet with the chief, and then we're gonna have another finance committee meeting to finish what we didn't finish tonight because we wanted to talk to the chief first.
That'll be on the 26th.
Mm-hmm.
With
At 6 o'clock, with the select board
6
right here,
o'clock.
so we can
Yeah,
just
we're gonna,
chase.
at the select board meeting, we'll have to,
it doesn't have to be, I'm just suggesting.
Yeah, or you can meet on your own.
Right.
I mean, yeah, could we, I would
I've
be
met
more comfortable
downstairs.
not meeting the day
then come-
before town meeting.
This would be a week before town meeting.
we could meet downstairs at 6 o'clock, and then, I've done that, in the hallway.
Wait, so
There's plenty of
you want to, wait,
chairs.
hold on a second, you want to meet
Oh,
on the
okay, there you go.
26th?
Yes.
And then
I
come
can't
to
meet
the
on the
select board
26th.
meeting.
How about
But
the
prior to
27th?
that, a few of us
27th
will
works
meet
for
with
me.
the chief.
27th works for me.
27th works?
I think it works.
That's the week before town meeting.
Plenty of time.
27th, if the 27th works for everybody else, that's great. It's Thursday, it's right here.
27th isn't great. What were the other options again? Yeah, I need
Probably
to work
behoove you to pick 2 people to meet with the chief, because you don't want 3 there, because then you would have to post it.
Right.
Well-
Because you would have a quorum. So 2 people talk to
Wow.
the chief and get back for your next meeting.
Well, I meet with the chief on the 24th.
What day is that?
I
Well,
meet with the
Monday.
chief on the 24th on Monday for the ambulance. So maybe someone could do something
I could do the
with me.
24th, I could do that.
And we can do it after or before that meeting.
I can go with you. I'd like to do that.
I'd like to talk to him too.
Yeah.
So
But
this
to
is,
Donald's point, do we want a quorum there so it's posted?
Well,
and-
it's, you just have to post, it's not that you
Right.
can't,
Yeah.
I was just making
Okay.
sure you just
No
know.
discussion
No,
regarding
it
the
won't be
fire
enough
truck
time.
budget?
Yeah,
Is that
Post them
the,
both.
is there enough time?
this is for Monday?
the
Monday,
24th on Monday,
24th?
yeah.
The 20th.
Looking.
yeah.
I thought, no, because it has
As
to
long as
be,
it's posted by tomorrow,
You're
right?
talking about the 24th?
it's 48, isn't it 2 days?
That's not enough.
Two business
Because
days?
we would have to have
Two
posted
business
it before
days.
it's-
Not enough.
Not enough.
It's not enough time.
You don't count
How about the
kids.
20, oh,
No.
Well, I mean, a small
Okay.
group can meet on the 24th. 2 of you can meet, not 3.
Well, we all want to talk to him,
Well, then you have to find
So-
another day.
right,
25th? What was that?
which is Tuesday.
Oh, today's the
Oh,
20th.
right.
I can do the 25th.
What was the conflict with that? 25th? I can do it. So.
I don't.
I can do the, I can't
do.
do the 26th, that's the day I can't do. All the other days are fine.
What's HHC? What's on the calendar? HHC?
I'm sorry?
HHC is on the calendar for the 25th.
Historic.
Municipal Building
Cultural
Committee?
Council?
H?
Hadley Cultural Council?
The
Oh,
historical?
Housing
Oh,
committee?
maybe.
Hadley Housing Committee?
Okay.
No.
So
They
they're
can
at
Don't
7.
meet here.
But they can meet at my room.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
we'll find a place.
Right.
Okay, so we're gonna do Tuesday
Tuesday the 25th?
At 7 p.m.?
with the, yes.
Well, you have 6:30 ambulance.
That's on, that, I'm doing that on Monday.
Oh, okay, so 25th.
Can you do-
Assuming the chief can go, I mean, we gotta.
Yeah, right, I
Yeah.
want to check with Mike, yeah.
Betty will.
I'm sure.
Well, if he doesn't, then he knows what the answer's gonna be, right? I mean, and we have no choice at that point, right?
And then the select board meeting is
Wednesday.
Wednesday that we have to go to, okay?
The 26th is the select board meeting?
Yep.
That's the public forum.
Yeah, well, I'll just have to tell you guys what I think at that point.
Okay.
Or if we're all there on the 25th, we could vote on the 25th.
I think that we can talk with him and then
Yeah.
see
Then-
what we can do.
and
And
then
that also
vote.
gives us time to look, if we can, have opportunity to really look at
Okay,
it
so
more.
the 25th here, here?
Yep.
You think we're gonna
Here
try
or
to
in
do
your
it?
office?
Either one, whichever's open.
At
Okay.
7, and you'll,
At
Se-
7?
7 o'clock.
yeah.
Okay. So let me put that in here. 25th, 7. Finance Committee with chief. Now, are you gonna contact the chief and let him know that his presence is required? At 7, did you say?
I could text them.
Go ahead, text him.
It's 9 o'clock, I won't do that.
Well, it's probably better if David does it officially anyway.
When's the forum?
Then David doesn't live in
I don't know
town,
what
so he
time it
won't
is.
ignore David's house when it goes up on flame.
What time's the forum, Molly?
Form's at 7.
At 7?
Yeah.
Is that's at Hopkins, right?
And that's on the 26th.
Yep.
So you guys are doing everything at once.
Yeah, it was just an information session, so that's the primary focus of that. We were just gonna open our meeting for a poll hearing immediately prior.
Oh, okay.
Is the,
Are you calling him?
Yeah, I'm calling them.
It's 9 o'clock.
He's a fireman.
I know, but still.
And he's the only one.
Still not nice.
Couch watching Scandal.
He's not answering anyways.
he's,
Or you might be on a call.
does it,
Yeah.
Poor
right.
guy.
Put a smoke bomb out the window.
Want me
We'll
to
be
try
here.
and do that?
We can all call him now.
Oh my gosh.
Let's take a turn.
Poor guy.
All right, so the goal is to meet Tuesday, providing that he can meet with us, and then hopefully iron this out. And then Wednesday we have the forum. Okay.
See, I have budget meeting 7 o'clock written here, and I have no idea
For the 3rd?
for the 25th, and I don't know whose budget that is. I thought that was us, but I guess we didn't because we're now we do. All right, well, we do. All right, so we're gonna hang on to this one until then, and then
Okay.
what other business do we have to get done today?
Just the consent agenda.
This is not going to change again before Tuesday, right?
I'm not changing it.
Okay. Just asking.
All right, I saw it.
I get lost in papers,
Oh,
and I'm like, which one is that?
you got more papers.
Yeah, more in case
Thank you
need-
for coming.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Is that my little clip that you were playing with?
Yes, sorry.
Thank you.
So,
I five-finger discounted your clip.
there are 25 articles on the warrant. The consent agenda proposes to pass by acclaim 5 of those articles so that we can get into the 20 that require debate. We're presenting this consent agenda to the voters saying that the Finance Committee is on board with the consent agenda, so I thought it would be polite to actually ask you.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Wait.
I'm on board just to make the meeting go by quicker. These meetings last forever.
We already make a recommendation.
You already made a recommendation on a lot of these.
I thought,
Right.
absolutely, but I'm just saying that that there's nothing controversial here in your eyes, and that this is truth in advertising, that I've actually asked you that you're actually consenting to this, so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you want us to make a motion and make a
No,
vote?
just hearing no objection, we're gonna
Okay, then.
proceed.
Okay,
We're
so
good.
we're good on the consent agenda.
All right,
Yes.
so the way that I approach town meeting is that I budget 5 minutes per article. That seems to be the clip that we go along. The budget itself will take about half an hour. Anything else that's controversial will take 15 minutes to half an hour. I'm not seeing a whole lot of controversy on this particular warrant, so I'm expecting that we're going to be able to do this in about 2.5 hours, 7 o'clock to 9:30. That's what I think. Maybe I jinxed it.
Nice.
And what's to stop somebody from standing up and just talking forever?
I'll pass you $1 if you call the question.
Pass you $1 if you call it. Oh.
Yes.
Should do
You
that
went
later.
out. I think you didn't tell us $1 last meeting. Did he tell
No,
us $1?
I mean, I'm joking. Obviously, we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to speak and that the discussion is full and frank on all the important items there. But if if the moderator determines that people are just repeating things without adding
Any
new-
value, you know?
any new information, then he'll move it along to a vote. So there is no filibuster, in other words.
I don't see any big controversial things that we've had like in the past.
No,
Right.
there's no tiny
Like the tax
houses.
increase for the fire department? You don't think that's gonna be?
Oh, not after what, it's nothing compared to what we just went through
Yeah.
with, we just added this building and that building. And do you
Well,
wanna
so
do-
I'm a little concerned about that because, if we have money for a new senior center and we have money for, this, that, and the other thing, but yet the fire department we don't have any money for, that doesn't make any sense to
This
me.
is where I said you need to really have a defined budget before you go and ask the town people to say, can we have $300,000 for our fire department? If we cannot balance our budget, and then you add on all these new buildings, which I get,
Well, let me ask a question. So are the building of all those new buildings, are they in here? Are they in this budget? Or where's that money coming from? Where are those buildings getting built from?
Well, there are two buildings that we're doing. There's a third building that's proposed, but we won't deal with that until the fall town meeting. Those borrowings are already baked into the budget, so those are already in there.
And we don't know what the costs are gonna be for electricity and all those other things once they're built, right? We just don't know.
Those will all increase.
So those are all gonna increase, and this is where I say, I really wanna have a defined thing.
I wasn't
before
at
we
that,
ask-
that town meeting. I mean, people voted and passed those things pretty easily, I understood. That they wanted a new town senior center and.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah,
Oh,
I've
yeah,
never
so-
seen, I'll be honest with you, I'm sorry, but I've never seen so many seniors come out and vote on something.
Look at,
I'll be honest with you.
Do we wanna move to close?
Yeah.
Okay, one more question before,
Media.
can you just tell me, how much we have in the water reserve funds and the sewer? What we have for monies in there?
I saw those numbers from Linda as of December 31st, and I don't have that memorized.
Okay.
So
All right, no problem.
if she's still here, maybe I can get that in.
No,
It's
you
all
can
right.
just, no,
You wanna make the motion to go
motion
home?
to adjourn.
yeah, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you all.